Hello everyone and welcome to Cinderful Gaming. I hope you're all doing well, I hope you're all staying safe, and most of all, I hope you're all fighting that war against the Grey. Today's video, we've got another Getting Started With Age of Sigmar 3rd edition video for you, and today we're going to be looking at the Gloomspite Gitz, and in particular, the Squig part of the Gloomspite Gitz army. This is an incredibly popular part of the Gloomspite Gitz army. Squigs are one of those iconic things in Warhammer. They're literal teeth with legs. They're just so cool. Now, Squigs make up a decent amount of the Gloomspite Gitz army. They have their own particular rules that they get affected by, much like a lot of the different parts of Gloomspite Gitz when the light of the bad moon is upon them. So the Squigs actually get the ability to run and charge when the light of the bad moon is upon them, and the army can be quite fast because of this. Now, this is all down to a little bit of randomness, of course, because Squigs do have a random movement. Generally, they move about 2d6. They can move more in other ways. Obviously, giving them run and charge means they move 3d6 and able to charge, which can be pretty fast, but it can also mean you move 3-inch and charge. But there is a particular sub-faction as well called the Jaws of Mork, or the Maws of Jork, depending on what you decide to call it. That gives you some cool benefits to help with dealing with some of these. So you've got the Jaws of Mork battle trait where you can re-roll the roll that determines the move characteristic of friendly units. So you've got a better chance of hopefully not rolling that terrible roll. You roll, that 3 to 5 on the movement. Hopefully you can roll that and you get something more like the 7 or 8, or if you're running and charging, that 13 that you want. This is really useful as an allegiance ability. It doesn't completely stop you from having terrible movement at times, because it can always be that chance. You're going to roll a double or triple one straight into that again. Believe me, it happens. But this is all part of playing with Squigs. They are extremely fun to play. The randomness is part of the army, and it is part of what you love about them. Now, the army is generally pretty good on the charge. You've got things like Boingrot Bounders that get better wounds, and also do some mortal wounds on the charge, and a lot of other stuff through the army does this as well. And for a cavalry army, they are pretty hoardy. They're not going to be like hoardy, like throwing blobs of 60 models on the table, but in comparison, they're going to put quite a lot of models on the table, where most other cavalry units are around that 150 to 180 sort of points range for like 5 models. You've got units of Squig Hoppers that are 180 for 10, and Boingrot Bounders at 5 for 105 is really cheap. This means you can field a lot of Squig units on the table and have a decent amount of models there for an army that is effectively an all cavalry army, and I use that term cavalry very loosely, of course. And so what we're going to aim in this video now to do is we're going to go through how we can get started with this army, what we can use to expand upon these initial purchases we suggest, and then we'll do a little sample army list at the end of the video so you can get an idea of how to put the army together, how it can work on the tabletop, and help you create your own, or indeed just copy ours if that's what you want to do. So with that said, we've talked a little bit about the Gloomspite Gitz, and in particular Squigs and what they do, so let's go look at how we can start off this army. And so the first unit we're going to look at today is we're going to look at the Loon Boss on Mangler Squig. He is our biggest option for a hero in the Gloomspite Gitz army. As a whole, he's a monster riding general, which is pretty sweet. And so the big thing with him is his Mangler Squig. The Loon Boss on top, he's a generic sort of grot hero. He's not really got much about him, but the Mangler Squig has a ton of damage it can do, and actually gets better when it's on those lower profiles. It starts going back up after you wound it too much. So in that middling profile is where you don't want it to be. If it's down low, it's actually more deadly. And so you've got cool abilities like Close Splat, where you add 1 to hit rolls for attacks made with a ball and chains if it made a charge. Once again, just the extra damage on the charge you're going to get through. You've got the Red Cap Mushrooms, where once per battle in your hero phase, you can say the model is eating a red cap. And until your next hero phase, you can reroll hit and wound rolls for this model, but not for the mount or crew. So this is just for the dude on top. So a little bit of extra damage out of that Loon Boss. If you've got a cool artifact on him, perhaps that might help. You've got the Watch Out ability as well, where when this model's slain, it gets to do some mortal wounds around it. And of course, you've got his command ability, Bite Damoon, where if you use it, you pick one friendly model with this command ability, and in that combat phase, you can add 1 to wound rolls for all Squig units within 18 inch of him, which is really awesome. He's just a great damage dealing piece, and also a great buffing piece for the rest of your force around him as well. He works really well with other Squigs around him. Now the first unit we're going to suggest to pick up is picking up a box of Squig Hoppers. Now, the reason you want to pick Squig Hockers over Boy and Grot Bounders first is because they are generic battle line, so it's going to allow you to build your armies out a little bit easier. If you've got the Manga Squig as your general, he makes them battle line, so that is how you have to do it. You can't take, say, a Fungoid Cave Shaman and have them as battle line. You're going to have that Loon Boss on Manga Squig as your general, or indeed another variation of Loon Boss with Squig in some way. But Squig Hoppers are pretty cool. They do mortal wounds when they travel over units, which is really nice if you check out the FAQ on them. And you've got some other cool things they can bring to the army as well. But in general, these are, I guess, your sort of baseline troop for a Squig army. They're great. They've got some good movement on them. They can get that rerolls to move, obviously. And yeah, mortal wounds when traveling across other units is really nice, doing some more mortal wound output. And so, where do we expand? Well, first of all, let's talk about Boy and Grot Bounders. Boy and Grot Bounders are effectively elite Squig Hoppers. They've got a better armor save at a 4+, which is pretty nice. And then you've got Boing Smash as their rule, where instead of moving over units, these guys do the mortal wounds when they charge. So you roll a dice for every model in the unit for one enemy unit that they've charged and ended within an inch of, and then they get a mortal wound for each model on a 4+. In addition, they've got pretty decent weapon profiles. They do only have 4s to hit, so this is maybe their weak spot. And then we've got 3s to wound on the charge for both profiles. Both profiles actually become the same on the turn they charge. And the Ren 1, damage 1, this is a decent amount of damage coming out of these models. Next, let's talk about the generic Manga Squig. So he's got a lot of things in common with the actual Manga Squig Loon Boss we talked about. Obviously, he's not got the Loon Boss on top, so he doesn't have that command ability there. But in general, Manga Squigs are pretty cool. They're cheaper variations. They work really well in tandem with a Loon Boss on Manga Squig. So if you've got the Loon Boss there, one of these next to him can form a really great sort of power pair running around doing a ton of destruction, because obviously the Loon Boss's command ability busts this piece really well. So that is generally the best way to run a Manga Squig in the army, just in tandem with another Loon Boss, or they can go out on their own and be great little wrecking balls. The other unit we've got here is we've got the Squig Herd. Now, these are Squigs that are sort of herded into battle by various little grots there, and they've got some cool rules. So, first of all, they've got Go That Way, where you can reroll run and charge rolls, and what's interesting about this is this is the only Squig unit that doesn't have a random movement. This can be really useful, just having a unit on the table that doesn't have random movement and you can just guarantee it's going to move that 5 inches every turn is really useful. This is great for like being that piece you actually claim objectives with in the game, just because you've got that consistent knowing what that unit can do and can be. Now we've also got the ability Squigs Go Wild on it, where each time a Cave Squig model from this unit flees, before it's removed from play, on a 4+, if there's an enemy unit, or rather a nearest other unit, so it can be friendly, that's within 6 inches of the fleeing model, on a 4+, it suffers a mortal wound. If 2 such units are at the same distance, you get to pick. But pretty cool little rule to have there. And so lastly, we've got the Loon Boss on Giant Cave Squig. I mentioned that you can certainly pick this up instead of the Manga Squig at the start, though I do think the Manga is better. This is certainly an option to pick up at the start because he doesn't lock. He's got the Ray Cap Mushroom, much like the Manga Squig Loon Boss does. And we've got Let's Get Bouncing, where you can use this command ability at the start of your movement phase. You can pick one friendly model with this command ability. All friendly Squig units hollow within 12 inch, move an extra 3 inch. So this is really useful piece to have, especially when you've got larger armies, like a couple of these scattered throughout your force. Being able to use these where you want them and all that sort of stuff is really useful to your army, especially if you sort of maybe bunch your army up at the start of the game and you can spring out with that extra 3 inch movement, sort of scattering across the board is useful. Keeping him near a couple of units that you really want to be able to move, that can be, you know, like far field objective grabbers, etc., is really, really useful. And so the last thing we've got here is we've got our little sample army list. So for starters, obviously we are playing in Gloomspite Gitz, and we're going to be playing with the Jaws of Mork subfaction. So this is the particular subfaction that is expressly for Squigs. If you're running Squigs, this is exactly what you should be running. There's no reason not to run this. You get benefits out of this for doing it. And so we're playing in the mortal realm of Chamon. I mean, it's just narrative here. Most of the Gloomspite Gitz stuff, like their the entrance to the asylum for Scragrot and all that, is in Chamon, so, you know, whatever. Predator's Domain is the green strategy we're going for. Squigs can be quite fast, so hopefully we're going to get across the table and sort of control more terrain features than our opponent. And Triumph, definitely going for Bloodthirsty for that reroll if we can get it. We are 50 points under, so hopefully we're definitely going to get that. A leader here, Loon Boss on Manga Squig. He's going to be our general. He's going to command trait an artifact which you get from this particular sub-faction. So for starters, we've got the command trait that we get, which is pretty cool. We can reroll failed battleship tests for friendly jaws and mork units holding within 12 inches of the general. This is useful because we do have really low bravery in the army. And then we got the Ciari Screamer Squig, where at the start of the combat phase, we can pick one enemy hero within 3 inches of the bearer. And if you do so, until your next hero phase, add 1 to hit rolls for attacks made with melee weapons that target that hero. This is great for taking down big foes that you really want to get rid of. As Manga Squig, just going into it, especially with some support from, say, some Boingrot Bounders, etc., is really going to do a lot of damage with +1 to hit. But that's our little sample armor list for Squigs. I'd love to hear what everyone's doing with them in the new edition of Warhammer Age of Sigmar. Leave us some comments below. Let anyone new try to get started with Squigs find out how and what they can do with this army on the tabletop. Well, that's the end of the video. We hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And if you'd like to, you can come over and chat more with us here at Sinful Gaming and our fine little community over on Discord. You'll find a link to that Discord in the description of the video. Lastly, we'd like to give a shout out to everyone who helps support the channel via Patreon and YouTube members. And if you'd like to help support the channel via Patreon or YouTube members, you can do so by one of the links in the video's description once again. But a special shout out to all our patrons: Christian Weir, James, Soren, Chaos Spawn, AJC, Kenny Lyle, Outer and Shop First, Andrew Bowen, Nathan Fee, The Rising Ape, Cure Dynamic, Agu, Anthony B, and Dynat226. And another special shout out to our YouTube members: Greenridge Gaming, Kenton Young, Steve T, The Real Zeop, Chris Wallace, Turo12, Vinny, Lock Lorick, Matt Mollin, Becca Kinski Groupie, and the Johnny84. And lastly, a definite special shout out first of all to Lady Witchfox Art, who does all the amazing artwork for the channel, and to Xmorphic, who does all the background work for our Discord server, keeping everything there running smoothly, because I am completely computer illiterate. Thank you very much. But that's it for the video. Hope you enjoyed it. Please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe again. Stay safe, stay well, and most of all, keep fighting that war against the Grey. Ciao for now.